Thank you for staying with us. This is Lagos Talks 91.3 FM, and my name is Olua Kayode. This morning, to have this discussion with us, we have Dr. Muda Yusuf, the founder of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises, joining us to have a look at the economy and the impact, the meaning of all what is happening right now, and the impact moving forward. Good morning, Doc. How are you doing, sir?
Good morning, Kayode. My pleasure to be with you.
Thank you for joining us today. Now, you heard the intro, how the National Economic Council was was inaugurated rather yesterday, how the Forex has been, the variation in pricing has been removed. And now we have more of a harmonized pricing, which saw the price shoot up to 600 and something yesterday. I don't know if the expression of shoot up is right. Then we see inflation also figures being released and saying it's 22.41, and of course it might hit 23 when the inflation figures for this year or this month of June is released next month. How would you describe our states right now of the economy?
Well, the state now is that we are on the right path because the economy is facing a lot of challenges already. The new administration inherited an economy that was in a very, very bad shape. And the immediate tasks that faces the administration is to fix the economy. And fixing the economy requires undertaking some very important reforms. So we are, at the face of these reforms being undertaken. And when I talk about reforms, I'm simply talking about some major changes that needs to take place in the way we manage the economy, particularly around some policies. So the first of that was tackled was the fuel subsidy removal. And the removal of the fuel subsidy is not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. And the end is to ensure that we better allocate resources and we use the resources that we have been, earlier using for subsidy. We use it much better, for the good of the country. So having removed it, the government owes the nation and the citizens the accountability to explain and to, be very transparent as to what the savings will eventually mean in terms of welfare, in terms of, stabilizing the economy and all of that. There's need for detailed accountability. I say that because the removal has come with a lot of pains. And for us to be able to justify it, we need to be very accountable. So we are still waiting for that to happen. And the government has assured us that the pain will not be in vain. So that is work in progress.
All right.
The second one is the removal, is the unification of the exchange rate. Some people have called it a devaluation, but for me, it is essentially introducing flexibility into exchange rate management. In other words, we are having a flexible exchange rate. And what that means is that the exchange rate will move in accordance with what we call the market fundamentals. Market fundamentals are the factors of supply and the factors of demand. So depending on how these variables move, the exchange rate will either move up or move down, depending on these fundamentals. And the practice generally in other climes that adopt this model is for the central bank to ensure that there is some stability to protect the system from excessive volatility.
Okay.
Now, what I mean by that is CBN intervention to stabilize the market. And when I talk about intervention, I'm not talking about the CBN going to fix the rate, which was what we had under Emefiele. What I mean by intervention is that the CBN will buy or sell to the market depending on the trend in the market and also depending on its capacity to be able to intervene in the market. Because it is also not in the interest of the economy that you have absolute free float. Everywhere, nothing is absolute. Even if we are running a market economy from time to time, you intervene to stabilize the market.
Okay.
So that is what I mean by intervention. So far, at least that is what has happened. I've also heard about, there's also this student loan that the president signed. Well, that is debatable. I'm not so excited about student loan because I feel that there are more important issues in the education sector to tackle. I know that we have the highest out-of-school children, for instance, in the world, which is very alarming, because that's another time bomb waiting to happen. If today we have 20 million out-of-school children, what happens to those children in another 10, 15 years? What will they become for the country? You have the issue of funding of the university. You have the ASU issue. You have all these issues, which for me are more critical than the student loan. And in any case, if you give a loan, is it not somebody who has a job that will repay back the loan? So all those issues are there. But on the whole, I think we are on the right path.
All right. Now, you made mention of certain things, saying market fundamentals that will determine how high or how low the currency trades. Now, which market fundamentals are required to make sure that the Naira gains against the dollar?
No, the market fundamentals that are required. First, when you talk about market fundamentals, you are talking about demand factors and supply factors. Now, on the demand side, before now, we have very huge demand driven by what you call round tripping. And what round tripping means is that people who have the connection will get the foreign exchange at 460 or 465 and sell it at over 700. And on each dollar, some of them make as high as 150 or 200 naira per dollar without doing practically anything other than the fact that they have the connection. And this group of people have made a whole lot of money from the foreign exchange market. So with the unification, that advantage will be removed. Therefore, the component of demand pressure coming from those who are into round tripping, that component will be removed because you don't have any advantage. So the pressure that they bring to the markets will be removed. And we have all sorts of parasites, speculators, and all of that. So that is an advantage on the demand side, because if you want your currency to appreciate, you should have a way to reduce the demand for the currency. So these people who are just there to take advantage of the gap is what we call the premium. Then we get them out of the way. So that will reduce the pressure on the demand side. Then another way to get the currency to appreciate is to improve the supply. Now, before now, a lot of supply, normally supplies come from various angles. The main supplier of Forex up to now is the Central Bank of Nigeria. Because all our oil proceeds and capital inflows come through the Central Bank. So the Central Bank is the custodian of our foreign exchange. So the Central Bank that has been supplying the market with foreign exchange. But we also had the prospects of getting foreign exchange from foreign direct investors. That is those who want to come and invest in Nigeria. They come with their dollar or whatever hard currency. they exchange it to Naira so that they can make their local commitments here. Because what you spend here is Naira. Then we have those who we call portfolio investors. That is those who come into the economy to invest in shares. Some of them invest in bonds, treasury bills, and so on and so forth. Then we have the export process. We have the diaspora remittances, which sometimes can be as high as $20 billion or more annually. Then we have inflows from the embassies, from international oil companies, and so on and so forth. So all of these inflows, because of the fact that the CBN had insisted before now that all inflows must come in at 460, most of these inflows stopped coming in. Because they know that in this economy, they know that the exchange rate out there is over 700. So when you ask them to come into the economy and take 460, most of them stayed away. Because if they want to go get out their funds, either in terms of profit or dividends, you cannot guarantee that they'll be able to get it at that 460. So that was a major distortion, which prevented a lot of inflows to come into the economy and therefore affected the supply side. So with the unification, we are likely to see more of those components of supply come to the market. And that will help to strengthen the currency. So those are the two factors on both sides of the fundamentals, that can help to strengthen the currency.
All right. And can tourism in any way also help that? Seeing that then you have individuals coming in with a lot more dollars, is that also a possibility where to focus on tourism?
Of course. It's a big possibility, because now it will even be cheaper for tourists to come to Nigeria. Because if you are coming and you are exchanging your dollar for 700 now, or slightly over 700, that is more money for you to spend. Other than what you had before, when you bring your dollar, they tell you that you have to take 460. So it's cheaper for them to come to the country now. It's cheaper for those who want to buy shares, who we call portfolio investors, to come to the country now. Because the Naira equivalent of the hard currency they are bringing is much higher. So it's a very big incentive for all these inflows to come in. So that is the export we are talking about. Because to strengthen your currency, you need export. And export is not only about tangible goods, it's also about services. So when you talk about tourism, you talk about maybe our banking services, you talk about our citizens going there as footballers or exporters. I mean, there are a whole lot that is happening out there that can generate foreign exchange, and people can come in here. And because the economy is also very big, we are the largest economy on the continent, we have the largest market. So the prospects of people coming here is extremely very high. If only we had liberalized their access into the economy. Because the foreign exchange is critical for these flows of capital or funds. If you don't get the foreign exchange right, money will not flow into the system, and more money will be flowing out, which is what we have had for the past 7 years or so. So I agree with you, it's going to help tourism a great deal. And in order to complement that, the government also needs to liberalize our visa policy. We have to do a lot more visa on arrival, so that it will be easier for more people to come to the country. I mean, there is nothing wrong, for instance, if you say that anybody who has maybe EU passports, anybody who has US passports, British passports, Canadian passport, please come in here. You don't need to be going all over the world looking for our embassy. Come in here, get to the airport, we give you visa on arrival.
Wouldn't that make us look cheap and desperate? We're supposed to be a power broker.
No, go to Dubai. That's what making those countries tick. Look at their tourism sector. Look at Emirates. They have visa on arrival for over 50 countries in Dubai and many other countries like that. You know, but here, rather than allow these very rich countries to come on visa on arrival, we give preference to African countries. How much do they have to spend? We're even better than many of them. You know? So as a fundamental policy to even boost tourism, that is one thing we should quickly address. I mean, somebody who is coming from Canada, a Canadian citizen or an Australian citizen or US citizen, there's a probability that he has more money to spend. There's somebody coming from Cotonou or coming from Ghana or Senegal or Niger or Chad. You know? So we need to tweak all of these things, and through that, the economy will benefit. The hospitality industry will benefit. The entertainment industry will benefit. So these are some of the things which I expect, and they are low-hanging fruits anyway. I mean, what does it take you to announce that? Yes, what does it take to announce that, okay, I'm listing all these countries, particularly those who are maybe OECD countries, advanced economies. If you have your passport, if you're a national, you are free to come here. Because for somebody, sometimes for people to get Nigerian visa,
it's quite tough.
It can be very tough.
It is.
Very tough. Unless you have something desperately to do here. Why will you go through all those troubles to come to Nigeria for what? So we need to make it easier. There are some people who just want to come and explore. It could be business tourism, it could be religious tourism, it could be, whatever it is.
But I mean, what you said, it sounds good. It sounds like giving access to people, but wouldn't that affect our, foreign relations policy, in the sense that if you were to give a Canada and not an America, or you were to give a Canada and America and not a Brazil, or you were to say Europe, then China would be like, what about us and all the trade? Australia that's looking at doing business with you. Morocco is there. They've been trying to do things with Nigeria. I mean, are we now saying we open it up to everybody, or if we pick and choose, wouldn't the others react?
The way it is done is that you are selective. It's done everywhere in the world. I just told you about Dubai.
Yes.
They have a long list of countries. Even the US, UK, go to their website. You will see so many countries where they say visa on arrival. There are even some countries that they allow for visa free. They don't need a visa to come. You choose the countries that will benefit you economically. And that will boost your economy, significantly. So that is the way many countries do it. But here we sit and say that we are working on reciprocity. If they don't give us, we don't give them. We need them more than they need us anyway. So you can't be using that kind of parameter to determine who to give.
So what you're saying in essence now is that we need to tweak our diplomatic policy and be a lot more receptive, be humble, eat the humble pie. We're not where we used to be back in the 70s or 80s.
Of course. If you know that they are coming, will benefit you more, even if they are not giving you visa on arrival at their country.
Yeah.
But you have more to gain by them coming here. Why not? I mean, this is promoting your own self-interest and also seeking to boost your economy. There are some very big countries where we don't even have more than one embassy. So most people now travel almost 4 hours to go to an embassy, and it's not guaranteed that you get to the Nigerian embassy, you pick up the visa immediately. Sometimes you have to visit 2 or 3 times. You are making it difficult for people to visit your country.
Yeah.
So these are things I expected the Tinubu administration.
Like you said, I've seen a lot of people go to other African countries, particularly in West Africa, such that when they believe when they get there, they'll be able to access the visa to Nigeria, and they're coming from all parts of the world. So I've seen that happen. But now coming to the news that came out yesterday about the headline inflation, 22.41%. Did you see that coming? Or were you expecting that it would drop or not be as high as this, though it was a marginal increase of 0.19%?
No, it is very marginal. Nothing surprising about it. It's just following the trend that you have seen. What is likely to change is the June inflation figure. By the time you now factor in the fuel subsidy thing, we are likely to see a much bigger figure. But this one, just 19 basis points, which is very, very small, and nothing has changed. Essentially, nothing has changed. And the key drivers of inflation still remains the issues around the cost of energy, problem of insecurity affecting food inflation, things like our exchange rate, which is also an issue, transportation costs, So basically, those things remain the key drivers of inflation. So nothing has changed dramatically as far as the inflation numbers are concerned. And given what is happening globally, if you are still having inflation at 22.4, it's still not too bad. I mean, if you see some figures in Ghana and some other countries, some of them are talking about 30%, 40%, 50%, and so on. So it's still manageable. It's still fair.
But the fear and concern of many Nigerians now is that, like you rightly said, this 22.41 does not really reflect the impact of fuel subsidy removal. By June, when that is really biting harder. How much? Because right now, food inflation is at 24.82%. That's food inflation. What would it look like in May? And where would that position the economy? Wouldn't that be more pressure on the economy, though the president seems, like you said, to be taking some right steps?
No, yes, it's likely to reflect in June inflation, which is more pressure on the people. But the reality is that, fuel prices have gone up by maybe 150% or so.
Yeah, 220.
Maybe 200%.
Yeah.
Now, the reality is that prices are not likely to go up at that corresponding level of increase. Even as I speak to you, there are still many products whose prices have not changed. Visit the supermarket, visit some of these places. Many of those products' prices have not changed. Of course, the first thing that has changed is transportation cost. And even in transportation costs, some of the increases are just about maybe 20% increase, 30%, maybe maximum 50% increase, even though the fuel price has gone up by close to 200%. So the point I'm making is that it's not in all cases that the inflation numbers or the price increases will rise at the same level at which the fuel prices had risen. This is will vary from product to product. There are some products whose prices you cannot even increase because of consumer resistance. So once you face that kind of situation, it is the business owner that will bear the brunt. Because if you are in a product segment that you are even struggling to sell anyway, and you now go and increase your price, your customer can just walk away. If your customers walk away, what are you going to do with the product? So because of that, there are some segments of products that even the increases are very marginal. And there are some segments where there are no increases at all. But that is not to say that it is not a lot of pressure, because transportation cost is a major component of the cost of living, especially for the ordinary Nigerians.
All right. Now, still on this fuel issue, some of the vehicles, I mean the buses, you said 20%, but initially, I haven't confirmed that as of today, but initially when the fuel price was removed, the cost of transportation in a place like Ikoyi to Aja axis, which used to be, was it 400 or 500, went up to 1,000 naira at that time. Now, there are businesses, of course, a lot of businesses prior to this were using diesel to drive their business, and the cost of diesel has gone down from 7 to around 600 and something. So it feels like it might be better for them. However, some of these people will still take advantage of this moment, this period where the fuel price has been, subsidy has been removed and prices are going up. What can government do to make sure that businesses who are not really directly affected by the impact of fuel subsidy removal do not take advantage of this and increase the price astronomically? Is there a price? Can the government introduce price control in certain segments of the economy?
No, price control has never worked in this kind of environment. We don't have the institutional capacity to enforce it. So what the government can do is to work on the supply side.
Okay.
And what I mean by supply side is to, maybe introduce more buses, for instance. We have been talking about mass transit buses. If the providers of these services know that people have alternatives, then they will sit up and adjust. And that will help to remove the excessive profits, or the profiteering components of pricing. Okay. So competition is key. And the way to use competition to drive down price is to make sure that you have more suppliers of the product, whether it's a product or services. So the government has to work on the supply side of this equation, because price is a function of demand and supply. So if the government works on the supply side, either by reducing tariffs on all these buses so that those buses can be cheaper, whether it's all these 18-seater bus, 15-seater bus, or the big buses. I mean, right now, the tariff is anywhere between 20 to 30%. Government can reduce the tariff by 50% and waive some other taxes so that more people can buy those things. The same thing with all these small vehicles, so that more guys who are interested can go into this Uber business and so on. I mean, if you waive any vehicle below 200, 2000 cc and below engine capacity, you can reduce the import duty. So that more guys, who are unemployed can just jump on this Uber business and be moving. That will help to improve the supply side, and more people will be able to provide the service. As more people come in, the prices will drop, and even the initial prices, I'm sure with time, those prices will begin to reduce. Normally, when you have this kind of policy, initially there'll be a jump. Then after some time, those prices will come down. But in order to put pressure on it to further come down, you have to push on the supply side and reduce the cost. All right. The government has talked about more use of CNG and all of that. Yeah. They need to quickly roll that out so that there's less dependence on PMS. We need to see improvement in power supply so that you don't need to be buying fuel for generator all the time.
All right. Now, yesterday, the National Economic Council was inaugurated, and one of the first things they spoke about was the likelihood of getting earmarking 702 billion naira for allowances, salaries, and other funds that will, mitigate the impact of the fuel subsidy removal. Now, we heard experts like you say that when you increase salaries astronomically, it might lead to inflation, because then the seller on the streets may want to take advantage of that. Since you have more money, let me increase the cost of my wares. What does this really mean, the 720 billion? Is it the right move? And even will that be enough to assuage the impact of the fuel subsidy removal on people?
Well, the percentage of people who are in government service as a percentage of the total workforce in the economy, I'm not sure it's up to 10%. So when government come up with this kind of policy, it's not something that benefits everybody. Yes, it will benefit those who are in government service, but for the larger population, it will not benefit them.
Okay.
And generally, when there is this announcement that wages are going to increase, normally it results in inflation, because apart from the real effect it has, it also has some psychological effects. People feel that everybody now has more money. not knowing that there's a difference between those who work in public service
exactly
and those who
the
are
average man
who
on the
are struggling
streets.
on their own. So this thing, yes, really has some inflationary implication. But what I think is more important is for government to go beyond just talking about these salaries. I talked about provision of more buses, for instance, which will be available for everybody. I talked about using import tariffs or some other policies to bring down the cost of food. Because one of the things we need to address is the cost of living. How do you bring down the cost of living? How do you bring down the cost of food? How do you bring down the cost of LPG, which is already going down anyway? But we need to sustain that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, how do you bring down the cost of bread, the cost of noodles, and of course the cost of transportation? So we need to come up with some fundamental policies. Because how many people will you give handouts to? They talk about the World Bank, $800 million and so on. How far can that go? You have a population of over 200 million people. So we should be looking at some of these fundamentals that can bring down the cost of living.
All right.
How can we also use our tax policy to say that, okay, anybody earning below 200,000 gross income, there should be no taxes. You waive it completely for them.
Okay.
How can we waive some of the inputs that some of these food processing companies, some of their raw materials, how can we waive import duty on it so that the cost of the food they are producing can come down? So these are
it has to be more like decisions that go straight, that addresses different industries and a production line, you know, so that it can have a direct impact on the average person. It goes beyond increasing providing allowances. That's what you're saying.
Certainly, yes. All right. Yeah, that's the point I'm making.
All right. So, Dr. Muda Yusuf, thank you so much for this morning, for joining us to have to inform and educate Nigerians on the way forward. Dr. Muda Yusuf is the founder of the Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises.